Reroute. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Go straight on. Turn left. Go straight on. Go straight on. Turn left. and then turn left. Turn left.
But, you know, this is part of what's difficult about when Nigel Farage says things at the moment. He hasn't been tested in government. He's barely been tested as an MP. So I think there are question marks around how he would do things.
Good. Thank you very much. As always, as Aggie Schombra, LBC's political correspondent. That went quickly. We're out of time. Thanks for your company, as always, this morning. I'll be back in for Nick Ferrari at breakfast tomorrow morning, and then for Tom Swarbrick this week, and then back on my normal 10pm show from next Monday. I hope you consider joining me then. If you miss any of this morning's show, you can listen back and catch up on both Global Player and, of course, the brand new LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and opinion in news categories in the order that you want, and pause and rewind live radio, as well as listening to a range of podcasts. Download the all-new official LBC app for free from your app store right now. Thanks again for your company this morning. Coming up at 3 on LBC, Vanessa Cloud. Right now, here he is, Mr. Ali Mirage.
Thanks, Ben. Get some rest. Nigel Farage is expected to outflank Sir Keir Starmer by committing to scrapping the two-child benefit cap and fully reinstating the winter fuel payment as he appeals to left-leaning voters in a challenge to Labour launching his biggest attack yet on the Prime Minister. Will moving left on welfare and right on immigration put Nigel Farage in Downing Street? At 1, the eradication of cervical cancer in England has been threatened by a slump in the number of children being vaccinated in schools due to reluctant parents and a near doubling in pupil absences. Why are fewer people getting vaccinated? And at 2, police believe that live facial recognition cameras may become commonplace in England and Wales, with the number of faces scanned having doubled in the last year. Are we becoming a Big Brother state?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Deputy Prime Minister has refused to confirm to LBC whether the government will scrap the two-child cap on benefits. Angela Rayner said it's a policy area being considered, but has insisted it's not a silver bullet to tackle child poverty. It's reported that Nigel Farage will announce Reform's intention to scrap it if his party gets into power. But the Conservative Shadow Minister Kevin Hollinrake has told Ben it's an empty promise.
Where's £2.5 billion a year coming from? You've got to look at these things in the round. They've got to be looked at properly, and we will do that over the next 4 years. We'll have policies that I think our supporters will like, and much of the public will like, but we'll always seek to balance the books. You have seen all these promises from all the other parties that they can't afford.
The Deputy Prime Minister has told LBC she has no desire to be Prime Minister or leader of the Labour Party. Angela Rayner's come under pressure this week after the leaking of a memo to the Chancellor calling for tax rises prior to the spring statement. Ms Rayner says she has no desire to challenge Sir Keir Starmer's leadership.
100%. I do not have any desire to be leader or run a leadership campaign. I am incredibly proud to be the Deputy Prime Minister and to be building the social homes that kept me safe when I was young.
Yep.
Building employment rights that means that people have good, secure work.
Ms Rayner has also denied that she was not behind the leaking of the memo. Russia and Ukraine say they've completed an exchange of 1,000 prisoners each this morning. The two sides each freed a further 303 captive soldiers on Sunday. It comes hours after a huge series of drone and missile strikes on more than 30 Ukrainian cities and villages. The government's programme to renationalise Britain's railways has begun today. Services previously run by South Western have now been brought under state control. And house builders in England who leave development sites unfinished for years could face losing their land to local councils. Developers will also have to commit to delivery timeframes before getting planning permission under the new government rules. LBC weather, a mix of sunshine and showers for most going into the afternoon. Heavy rain will linger for a time in northern Scotland, drier in the south. Highs of 21 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Dominic Ellis.
Got an unexpected message, phone call or email that claims to be from HMRC? Take care. It could be a criminal pretending to be us. To protect yourself, never rush to share personal information or part with your money. Learn to recognise signs of a scam, such as being put under pressure to share bank details. And if something seems fishy, report it to HMRC straight away by searching HMRC scams on gov.uk. Protect, recognise, report.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ali Mirage.
Very good afternoon to you. It's Ali Mirage on LBC. It's 4 minutes past 12. I shall be with you until 3 p.m. for the regular weekend shows every Saturday and Sunday from midday until 3. I hope to find you very well this Sunday afternoon, or at least just as well as the Arsenal women's team, who I must congratulate on winning the UEFA Champions Women's League against Barcelona. Always delighted when an English team does so well in Europe, so congratulations there. Not so many congratulations, unfortunately, to Angela Rayner, who ruled out becoming leader of her party. And there I was thinking that we could hang out at Blindbourne, listen to some opera, or maybe hang out in Ibiza together. But sadly, no, she's not going to stand. If you believe that, you'll believe absolutely anything. Now, I wanted to start with Nigel Farage, because front page of the Telegraph today, Sunday Telegraph, Farage to outflank Starmer on benefits. Reform leader pledges to reinstate winter fuel payments and fully scrap two-child cap. Now, we were talking about the two-child benefit cap yesterday, and it got lots and lots of engagement and calls and many, many different ideas on whether we should or should not indeed change that policy. And what this Telegraph piece today is saying is this,
and then
that Nigel Farage will this week outflank Sir Keir Starmer by committing to scrapping the two-child benefit cap and fully reinstating the winter fuel payment.
Go straight
Now, the Reform leader is going to appeal to left-leaning voters in a challenge to Sir Keir Starmer in a speech launching his biggest attack yet on the Prime Minister. His intervention is likely to spark a fresh wave of demands from Labour rebels for Downing Street to speed up planned policy shifts on both fronts. Well, we know Sir Keir Starmer is under severe pressure from at least 150 of his backbenchers on this particular matter. Now, Sir Keir is open, as we understand it, this is what we were talking about yesterday, to scrapping the two-child benefit cap, but Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is understood to be resisting. Well, we know why, because she's probably got a 60 billion further black hole to fill, which is going to mean, you guessed it, tax rises and or spending cuts, and those could be quite swinging. And she's understood to be resisting the announcement until she can set out clearly how it would be funded. Now, removing the cap entirely, combined with reinstating winter fuel payments for some pensioners, as announced last week, would cost the Treasury around $5 billion, making tax rises more likely. No surprises there. And number 10 is planning to reinstate the payment to maybe not all pensioners, but it's planning to do something quite drastic on the winter fuel and also on the two-child benefit cap. It may very well be moving in the direction which I expect, which is that it's going to be scrapped in at least in some form. I think it will probably go in its entirety. Now, Mr. Farage is going to use his first address since Reform's local elections triumph and that Runcorn and Helsby by-election victory to warn the Prime Minister that traditional Labour voters are turning to his party. And he's expected to say this, and I quote, "Starmer is one of the most unpatriotic Prime Ministers in our history, and this past week has seen evidence of that. The Prime Minister is out of touch with working people. He doesn't understand what they want and how they feel about the big issues facing Britain. It is going to be these very same working people that will vote Reform at the next election and keep Labour out of government." Now, just bear that in mind while I ask you this question. Because it's very interesting here, isn't it? Because Nigel Farage is he used to be a Thatcherite at one point, and he was deeply unimpressed with the Tories. He was a Tory many years ago, he was a complete Thatcherite. And now seems to be moving left on economics, much more to the left on economics. You remember on the Scunthorpe steel plant issue, he said that it should be renationalised to secure those jobs because they were strategically important for Britain. And now on this particular issue, he's talking about removing the two-child benefit cap to encourage people effectively to have more children. He believes that we need to have more children in this country, and he wants to completely reverse the cut in winter fuel payments as well. So on economics, Farage, who's a former Thatcherite and an old UKIPper, is tacking to the left, which is very, very interesting, because we know that on immigration he's already tacking to the right, and he's always been tacking to the right, but he's been quite hardline about that, and he believes that he wants to actually push the Prime Minister even harder. He doesn't trust the Prime Minister on that, and he's expected to say on that issue immigration is still at a historical high, and Labour don't have the want or political will to do what needs to be done to bring it down to net zero, which is what the majority of the British public want. So he's moving right on immigration and left on economic matters. And I want to ask you this. It's quite an astute move, you could say. My question is as follows. Will Nigel Farage, tacking to the left on welfare and right on immigration, put him in Downing Street? Will Nigel Farage, tacking to the left on welfare and right on immigration, put him in Downing Street? 0345 6060973, text 84850. Ask Alexa to send a comment to LBC. Now, there are some dangers in this, of course, for Nigel Farage, because you could say that a number of Reform voters might be Tories who have defected from the Tory party, who certainly would not be generally in favour of a scrapping of the two-child benefit cap because you believe in Tory personal responsibility and all the rest of it. But actually, Reform voters are potentially more leftward leaning than you might think, and it plays to this whole phenomenon that it's not just the Tories that are defecting to Reform, but it's also Labour voters, which is why Labour is in such a panic, not only on immigration, which is why Starmer came out with that speech just a few days ago talking about turning us into an island of strangers unless immigration is tackled, but also worried about the fact that people on the Labour left are also taking pot shots at the Prime Minister. And once you've moved on winter fuel, what are you going to move on next? Now, just this morning, the Deputy Prime Minister spoke to my colleague Ben Kentish, who was just here a few moments ago, and had this to say on the legitimacy of the Reform leader's comments.
Nigel Farage says a lot of things, but the reality is, like for my employment rights bill that lifted, gave people secure work, banned 0-hour contracts, he didn't vote for it, he voted against it. He voted against working people. So he can say he's going to give Jack tomorrow, but with all things Nigel Farage, snake oil salesman, it's not real, and he's not said where the money's coming from, and therefore I wouldn't believe a word he says on it.
Well, Angela Rayner's not believing a word he says on it, and it does throw down the gauntlet, does it not? That this is a brave strategy from Nigel Farage, a politically astute strategy from Nigel Farage to tack left on economics and right on immigration and social issues. But it's also fraught with danger because he's trying to out-Corbyn here on the one hand, and he's trying to completely move on the right on the other. Is this going to work? If you are a Reform voter, if you move to Reform, how do you feel about this? Do you feel that you're being let down if he removes the two-child benefit cap? Is that what you expected from Nigel Farage and Reform? If you're someone who voted Labour in the past and has been cozying up to Reform, would this lead you into a headlong rush into the embrace of Nigel Farage? And if you're a Tory, does this stuff you even more? Or does it give you a chink of light that there could be a way back for you because you could appeal to your hardcore Tory voters on personal responsibility when Farage is aping the left on this issue? Will Nigel Farage, tacking to the left on welfare and right on immigration, put him in Downing Street? 0345 6060973. Daniel in Dalton Green, what's the answer?
Please mind the speed.
Hi, good afternoon, Sally. As a passionate and proud Reform supporter, voter and member, I have to say that I genuinely believe that Nigel's position on immigration and welfare will put him in number 10 Downing Street for the very simple reason Britain, that is where the position and views of the vast majority of ordinary, decent, hard-working people in this country are.
Okay, let me ask you a pretty simple question. Where does the money come from for all of this?
So Reform's 28-page policy document is actually fully costed to the tune of £141 billion. And in the context of raising the two-child benefit cap and reinstating the winter fuel allowance universally, we're only talking about £5 billion out of total government spending, Ali, of £1 trillion. £5 billion could be found tomorrow. You could, for example, reduce the overseas climate aid budget from 11.6 billion to around 6 billion by doing that, and overseas countries would still get £6 billion, but we would be able to help the poorest children in this country and help pensioners who've worked all their lives.
Well, also, to be fair, Daniel, Zia Youssef, Reform's party chairman, has said that the party would pay for policies like the reinstatement of fuel and this two-child benefit cap being scrapped by cutting the foreign aid budget and closing asylum hotels and ending net zero subsidies. I mean, just to give a flavour of this, overseas aid in the last year, 15.3 billion spent on it, 0.5% of GDP. And also on asylum hotels, we've spent about 3 billion. So there is money there to be saved.
There is, absolutely. Look, the Home Office itself agrees that asylum accommodation is costing us £4 billion a year. Over this Parliament, that's £20 billion. So when we're talking about money for the poorest children in this country and pensioners who deserve their winter fuel allowance, it's peanut. And it really frustrates me, Ali, but I'm grateful to you for highlighting on LBC that there is this sort of false argument, this logical fallacy, mostly from people on the left, that say, oh, where are you going to cut? Where are you going to cut? How are you going to raise the money? How are Reform going to pay for all of this? When we're talking about £1 trillion of government spending, when we're talking about this current Labour government wasting £22 billion on untested carbon capture, £4 billion a year on asylum accommodation, billions of pounds on overseas climate aid. We're talking about tens of billions of pounds of money that is going to causes that are not in the UK that deserve to be.
Do you think endless welfareism is where the public is?
No, absolutely not. I don't think endless welfareism. I think people want to see their taxes spent properly. But I think, Ali, if we're talking about great British values, and we talk about the values of reform that Nigel and Zia and Richard Tice talk about, of family, of community, of country, people want to see their taxes that they pay and they work hard for spent on deserving causes. And I don't understand how people can say that the pensioners who paid into the system for 20, 30, 40 years and the poorest children are not deserving of that money.
Thank you very much indeed, Daniel. Always a pleasure to speak to you. Will Nigel Farage tacking to the left on welfare and right on immigration put him in Downing Street? 0345 6060 973, text 84850, ask Alexa to send a comment to LBC. Ali Mirage on LBC 1260.
This is LBC.
How do you grow a perfectly sweet strawberry? Well, it takes more than just soil and water, but time, care, and the best conditions to flourish. At Tesco, we keep every strawberry warm during the day and cold during the night to ensure they develop the sweetest flavour. It may seem like a little thing, but to us, it's everything. Now, if you don't mind, the strawberries are sleeping. Tesco, every little helps.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Got any tips for the football?
Your best bet is to head over to Bet Victor. They're giving new customers a terrific welcome offer. If you bet a minimum of £10, they'll give you £30 in free bets.
Oh, that's a steal of a deal.
It's a good darn deal that'll make you squeal for real. Neil?
My name's not Neil.
I know, but it rhymes.
Listen to that. Make your best bet on the football at Bet Victor. 18 plus, opt in and bet on any football marketing odds of even or greater, no cash out, 7-day expiry, terms and conditions apply. Gambleware.org.
Tired of watching your uninvested cash do nothing? With the Bank of England base rate reducing, investment platform IG is doing something extraordinary. IG is offering a whopping 8.5% APR available on all uninvested cash. Yes, 8.5%. Just open an account, transfer money in and make one investment before May 31st to unlock this incredible rate. Visit IG.com now to open an investment account today. Your capital is at risk. GIA, ISA and SIP accounts only. Boosted rate applies until 31st August 2025. Terms and conditions apply.
Thanks to their unique boutique spirit, there really is nothing quite like a Saga river cruise. There are the elegantly designed Spirit ships, the classic season on sale now. Chauffeur service available on UK mainland. Full terms apply. Over 50s only.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC with Ali Mirage.
Ali Mirage on LBC 12:18. Will Nigel Farage tacking to the left on welfare and economic policy and right on immigration put him in Downing Street? 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Farage to outflank Starmer on benefits. Farage wants to remove the two-child benefit cap. He wants to remove that to encourage people to have more kids, and he wants to fully reinstate the winter fuel payment as well.
Keep
on
right,
economic issues. We know
and
the
then
stance on
exit
immigration is very, very tough and direct. What do you think? Will it work? Will it get him to be Prime Minister? 0345 6060 973. Anthony in Ashford, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ali. To answer your question, no, we won't get him into Downing Street unless there's some kind of rainbow alliance, and you have to bring in people like Ed Davian. We saw that before, didn't we, with Cameron? We've got such a windy day today. All these weather vanes we've had in power, and he's just another one, Farage. He's jumping on the bandwagon of things that were, I'm going to not swear, but obvious, should we say, with a word missing there. The lecture is coming from Labour. Things like winter fuel, not from Farage.
Okay,
stop him jumping on the bandwagon.
It's interesting. Look, firstly, I don't think Nigel Farage is a weather vane at all. I think he's a complete signpost. Whether you like him or not, he's been very, very direct on and believing in his views around the EU for years, for decades. He's campaigned for it, and on immigration. You could say that he's being opportunistic on scrapping the two-child benefit cap and also reinstating the winter fuel payment. Why? Because he believes that that's where public sentiment is, and nothing wrong with that. Populists being popular, what's wrong with that? People denigrate him, but if he can find the money, good luck to him.
Well, yes, they've got to find the money, but what I somewhat question is, who is the backer of reform? Where is this coming from? Because it's a very strange thing, isn't it?
Well, who are the backers of reform? Like the thousands of people who voted for them in the local elections the other week?
Well, yes, exactly. But I think, I'm somewhat suspicious of this reverse takeover of the Tory party.
Well, it's not a takeover of the Tory party. He's not interested in the Tory party. He's interested in destroying the Tory party. And at the moment, it looks like he's going to be destroying Labour too.
Yeah, well, the figures just don't add up at the moment. However, one thinks that Labour still has a pretty overwhelming majority.
It does, Anthony, but let me ask you this. You're right, absolutely correct, that Labour has a majority of over 400 MPs, Reform has 5. The interesting thing is, though, you've had Starmer coming out with that speech recently on immigration, talking about us turning into an island of strangers unless immigration is reduced, and lots of people on the left getting very, very upset about the fact that he's clamping down on care visas and other things. And on this, now, we now understand the Prime Minister might be looking at scrapping the two-child benefit cap and removing and doing a U-turn on welfare. I mean, it's Nigel Farage is the de facto Prime Minister,
Please mind the speed.
Well, we saw that before on the Theresa May, didn't we? We had sort of backbenchers. Then we have Oliver Letwin, who was the de facto Prime Minister at one stage. Let's hope we don't get into that. But
Oliver Letwin was hiding in a cupboard most of his political career.
Please watch.
Sorry, go on, Anthony.
Yeah, the other sort of slight sidetrack I might draw you into is Boris Johnson, because we don't know what he's going to do. He's having a rather children at the moment.
But to be fair to Boris, Anthony, he is upping the birth rate, which needs to go up because it's 1.47, so he's doing his bit.
Well, exactly. But he's sort of lying remarkably low at the moment, isn't he? What say he didn't make a sort of move back into Parliament?
What he might do, because Kemi Badenoch's unfortunately rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic and not doing a very good job, but the Tory party's sinking and sinking fast. Look, do you think, your view is that Farage is going to come unstuck on this, is that it?
I think so. I don't think his health is with him. I think age is against him. But
on the policy itself, do you think it will work or not?
What, the welfare?
Yeah, well, he's tacking to the left on economics and right on immigration, and it's a risk, right? It's a risk because you could say that he might alienate some voters that he's attracting from the Tories by going, inverted commas, soft on welfare. So it's a risk. It's opportunistic and it's a risk. It might pay off, it might not. What do you think?
What I think is that in some respects might bring COVID into this. I know that seems a bit of a wild card, but the country has somewhat become addicted to welfare, hasn't it, since COVID? So people that perhaps before were anti-welfare, when they had furlough and things like that, that's what it's probably clinging on to. People now, it's not such a shame to be on welfare.
Well, it's going to be very interesting. I thought when this came out that it was interesting. It was a bold move. It's opportunistic, and it's also, I think, not without risk. But we shall see what happens. Anthony, thank you. Simon in Basingstoke, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ali. I think he's taking a full step here because he's not considering the circumstances of when he may come to power or when the next election may be. I think you may see that the fact that when the next election occurs, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is not in charge of British finances anymore. We'll be operating under an IMF loan agreement.
You really think it's going to get that bad, Simon?
I really do. Ali, I'm talking to an expert in this area, but what's the impact of driving out the wealthiest people from this country?
Well, a number of them are leaving, and some people would say, good luck to you, pack your bags and go, but they also are wealth generators, and they spend a shed load of cash in this country. So we need to be careful how far we push them. I understand that point you're making.
Well, it is. Well, imagine, but think about this, you know, if you're a millionaire and you're a multi-millionaire and you're paying $4 million a year in income tax, then to replace you, it takes 1,100 ordinary taxpayers to replace that income tax you're providing. That's the sort of thing we're looking at. And I think, you know, last month the UK borrowed £20.2 billion.
Okay. Yep.
We're running a massive deficit. So I think Farage would be far more prudent to be warning about what's coming down the trackers and saying how dangerous it is and how irresponsible government spending is.
But you see, that's very interesting, Simon, you make this point, because if you look at what's happening in America, they're also not facing up to the facts. Trump wants to do tax cutting for his rich mates when you still have a massive public deficit being run. And in this country, we're borrowing like there's no tomorrow. We're paying more interest on the actual debt that we are on many government departments. And on the back of it, no one wants to pay more tax. So there's a real reckoning coming here. But Simon, there are no votes in telling the public that there's a reckoning coming, is there? Are there?
I think you're wrong, because if you're telling people, look, this is the situation we're in, it's only going to get worse because of what the government's doing. So we need to change a lot of things. For instance, if you're in receipt of an index-linked pension from the government, I don't think you should get your state pension.
Understood.
Because of the cost of that, I think we should make every single asylum seeker come from a country. We should tell those countries that bill's not going to be paid by us; it's going to be paid by you. And if you won't pay the bill, then no visas to the UK, no trade with the UK, no access to the City of London. That's the sort of message that Nigel Farage should be sending.
Well, it's an interesting point, and I don't disagree with you that we are in a dire fiscal position, and I think we need to be honest about that. All of us need to be grown up about it. But Daniel was saying, my first Golders Green, that actually there can be savings made from overseas aid, from asylum hotels and other things, which could fund this reversal of the winter fuel cut and also the scrapping of two-child benefits, so that sums do add up in his view. Simon, thank you for your call. James in Bristol, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I haven't called him from before, so forgive me if I get short, but I really think Nigel Farage's policies are just completely I think he's just to see what's popular at the moment and just saying he's going to do it. I don't think he really has much of a plan behind it. He's really stated where he's going to get the money from. I think it was what similar to the Boris Johnson is. He sees where the crowd's going, jumps in front, and then says, follow me.
Oh, you mean like Keir Starmer?
Like Keir Starmer? Well, yeah. I think you're not going to hear much defend of Keir Starmer from me at all. I think he's just trying to do the same thing as well.
But isn't that what politics is to a certain point, James? You pace and you lead. You work out where the public is, and you meet the public where they are, and you try and lead them a bit. It's not just about following the herd or following the opinion polls. You set the agenda. I mean, Farage just set the agenda on Europe, whether you like it or not. A lot of people don't like it. Half the country don't like it. But he did, and he won, right? So...
And we're paying the consequences for that. And you can just see it all around. We lose 100 billion a year in trade because we left the European Union, the single market. And who was the main person pushing behind that? It was Farage.
Okay.
He doesn't have a plan. He just says things.
Okay, but James, okay, let's go with what you're saying for a second. He doesn't have a plan. He just says things. Then what explains the trouncing of the other parties in the recent local elections and the winning of the Runcorn and Helsby by-election?
Because they're scared they're going to lose their seats. Because the lead in the blind.
Yeah, but the public are not stupid. I mean, the public make informed decisions. They look at what's in front of them and they think, I'm totally sick and tired of these two traditional parties. Neither of them are delivering. The Lib Dems have always been a punchline for a joke. I'm going to try these guys.
I mean, I can understand why they're taking a gamble, but you take a gamble and you lose. And I think this looks like a very bad bet.
So why do you think, what do you think his strategy is? Do you think it's driven by rank populism that he's trying to suck up to people on the left and out Corbyn? Do you think it's going to work?
Honestly, I think he's just promising everything. He's promising everything, and he's got absolutely no solution on how he's going to do it.
Well, he's saying that he's going to make cuts in other areas. He's going to massively reduce immigration. He's going to massively clamp down on asylum. Now, we know that that's harder said than done because even Sir Keir Starmer said he would smash the gangs and he hasn't done it. So obviously we have to see what happens if Farage becomes Prime Minister. But he is saying that he's going to cost this, and the party chairman is saying it, that they're going to cost it by making cuts elsewhere. That's fair, isn't it?
Well, most of the problems in this country at the moment, I believe, are being caused by Brexit. There's how much money we've lost in trade. The reason we have asylum, these hotels, is because we left the Dublin Accord, so we have no place to, hold. You understand what the Dublin Accord?
Yeah, I do. When you can return people back into Europe. The Dublin Convention. We don't have that now, and obviously that's made life more difficult for us. But the thing is, James, we can reheat the old Brexit argument as much as we want. But even Sir Keir Starmer, who had a love-in with Ursula von der Leyen earlier this week, or last week now on Monday, even he's not going back into the EU right now. So that's off the table, isn't it? Why are we reheating that argument again now?
Because it is the underlying issue behind this country, and I'm absolutely sick with people ignoring it. That we're just going to call it off and just put our head in the sand and pretend that this wasn't a massive mistake and it's been absolutely detrimental.
Well, it's a fair point. The only party that's offering that, as far as I'm aware, is the Liberal Democrats, who are absolutely foursquare about rejoining the EU and very open about it. Labour's not there. We shall see what happens. Thank you, James, for your call. Will Nigel Farage, tacking to the left on welfare and right on immigration, put him in Downing Street? 0345 6060973 text 84550. It's in
This is LBC.
Wow, it's amazing how most of the favourite foods. You might be able to taste it, but you'd be surprised when they sort stuff like sausages, soup, and ready meals. Better health families, simple so good, and keep tasting great. To find out how much those too much, Better Health families.
Hey, Harry. When you see the football, your best bet is to own a bit picked up. They're giving you new customers a terrific welcome offer. If you pay a minimum of £10, they'll give you £30 in free bets. It's a good deal. We'll make it real. My name's not Neil. I know, but if you're online.
Listen to Harry, make your best bet on the football at BetVector. 18 months opt in and many football marketing odds to beat your great no cash out 7 day expiry terms and conditions apply.
Carlos, you owe thousands in compensation. If you took a car on a Friday from 2007 onwards, it may have been sold in commissions. My claim was working hard to help. So even if you got those details, make sure you check. Text claiming 866 My group authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Text claiming 866 Wait, save on July standard to 258 promotions was £23 now 15. Shop now and feel the loudest of the quick terms of time. Yes, that's right. Big well. So wow, because we price check because if they're to guarantee you one best price, but 95% of them below market value. Big we're big. What matters to you? See websites on your store. Visit Big World, the code KK, one of Oxford's best price and terms and conditions. Ali on LBC. Take 4
The Deputy Prime Minister has told LBC ministers are looking at scrapping the two-child benefit cap, but refused to state if it will happen. Speaking of Ed and Jack Bain, so that any reversal of government's winter fuel policy will be announced by the Chancellor. Developers in England who leave housing sites unfinished for years could see their lands handed over to local authorities, whilst government plans to new homes to be built faster. And South Western Railway has become the first company to transfer to public ownership under Labour, the first nationalised automated highways. The part project is on a replacement bus due to engineering errors. LBC weather, big sunshine and showers for most, heavy rain in northern Scotland, and highs 21 degrees.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC with Ali Raj.
Seems up 24 my for our tax due to left and right immigration continuing in down street 0345 6066973 from page of the Sunday Telegraph start benefits. Nigel Farage apparently this week is not committing to scrap a new child benefit and fully reinstate the winter fuel payment. Will he pull it off? That is the question. 6667973 Good on. Right. Look at raising the threshold for paying a tax, actually, from 25 to 20%, and raising the threshold for paying that to 100,000. So look, on one hand you want to be a tax customer, on the other hand you want to be a welfare salesman. Do you think it just didn't up? Yeah, exactly. But Miley, do you buy off on the fact that Zia used to say it's a process?
I don't believe in such things. I mean, for a start, you had Richard coming on, I think, the Telegraph TV or whatever they call it, which basically said, we're not actually going to go through those 9 billion of tax cuts that we said they would. Well, that was certainly a direction of travel only a week ago. It's very hard to believe that you can U-turn what is basically 10% of the government spending budget to turn around and say, oh, we wouldn't ever think of doing these things and would increase welfare spending. It's simply, cloud high in the sky economics.
Right.
And the fact
And then turn
the general trend for travel on this issue is a very low tax part. What they have set out is that there are very few votes to be had on the libertarian wing of politics versus the centre and the left. And ultimately, they can see how successful, for instance, like the Greens have been in going after Labour from the left. And it wouldn't take much for similar types of voters who aren't so environmentally minded use of direction. In that respect, there is certain traction there.
Yes. But he's scared about going right immigration, is it?
You are a populist.
Yeah.
He sets the direction of travel, which basically the government is following on that. So what Labour is basically looking to do now, as a result, is have a sort of Danish formula, which is hard right on immigration, centrist on economics, and then seeing if basically the other parties fall apart around them, which the Tories seem to be, because they've got no room at all. And the Lib Dems are in line with Labour on those things. So opposition are so opposition, they get no scrutiny and they get very little airtime, which is actually a very dangerous combination of the public. They don't know what they're doing.
Well, which is exactly why we're having a scrutiny now, because I do think that if this is going to be the policy direction, left on economics and right on immigration, that we need to disguise it and challenge and hold people to account from all parties, including reform. Thank you. Chris and on C. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ali. As far as Nigel's concerned, I would say that the wailing and the negativity that you are getting on your radio about this gentleman is totally unwarranted. In my view, he's a once in 100-year politician. He's never ever wavered from any of his beliefs, unlike most every other politician that you can name. His motto is family, community, country, and you can argue with that. Let me ask you a question, Ali. You obviously know more about politics than I do, but can you name me one politician, either now or going back for 30, 40 years, who A, would be invited to the most powerful man on the planet's private residence, i.e. Mar-a-Lago, with Donald Trump, and equally walk into any pub in Bradford or Carlisle or Sunderland or Plymouth or anywhere and be able to buy a drink?
Look, I think it's an important point you raised, because Rudyard Kipling told us you can walk with kings and retain a common touch. I mean, that is the way to handle things, and he certainly does have. And I don't disagree with Chris, and I've known Nigel for many, many years, and he's a very, very, very affable, likable sort of guy. But you've also got to be very, very clear and put him under scrutiny on what the policy platform is. Now, I agree with you that he has always been consistent around immigration and also around his views on and us leaving it. Those I would absolutely, completely agree with. But this is all a bit new, isn't it? Moving from a radical Thatcherite tax cutter to now try and cozy up on welfare reform. That's a political ploy, isn't it?
Well, yes, it could be seen as that, but to my way of thinking, it's about doing what's right. You see, there's all this talk about how he's going from the left, he's going from the right. No, it's about what's doing right for the country.
Understood, but doing right for the country also means, Chris, affording to do what's right and making the sums up. And I tell you, the public is for the back teeth of politicians of all parties promising one thing and delivering something different.
Well, you see, this is ultimately where they will be judged, because I'm utterly convinced reform will win enough votes for them to become the most powerful party.
Even in the South, Chris? Even to what Milo was saying about the fact that they will be consolidating votes from Labour in the North, but down South it's going to be much, much harder for reform? Do you buy that?
No, I don't think so. I'll give you an example. I've spoken. One of my son-in-laws is an entrepreneur. Runs a multi-billion-pound business. He has, within the last 3 days, said to me he will vote for reform next time out. Never ever considered it before. I've got another son-in-law who was a staunch Labour man, walked miles in all winds and weathers to try and get them elected. He absolutely doesn't starve. I mean, admittedly, he's gone to the Liberal Democrats. But what I'm trying to say is there are people from all sides who are now moving to reform.
Well, it's interesting because I give anecdotally. I mean, I spoke to one former Tory parliamentary candidate just a few days ago who is going to be voting reform, and also horror of horrors. One of my friends who works for a hedge fund, who I mentioned on the show before, who shall remain nameless, but lives in the oppressed district of Leafy Cobham in Scotland, is also he's so fed up on the lack of delivery on immigration, believe it or not. I mean, this is the most liberal-minded guy. I mean, he's not racist in any way. He's just fed up of being lied to all the time. So even he's going to vote reform. So you might be right, Chris. Thank you for your call. Fuzzer, a first-time caller in East Ham. Welcome, Fuzzer. Afternoon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir. What would you like to say?
I want to say how Nigel Farage, how he's going left on some issues and right on some issues. We've seen this happen before in the USA, where Kamala, I personally believe one of the main reasons she lost the election was because she split and she divided a lot of voters. And I believe in Britain there's a lot of people who want to go just purely right. And there is a purely left party, that being the Lib Dems. But I'm wondering, can Nigel Farage actually appeal to these wholehearted right voters if he's so split?
Well, I mean, no. For some, I mean, look, the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating, but we just had local elections and the Tory lost 700 seats.
I mean, I understand how the local elections can play out, but we've seen this situation happen before, and I think it's key to understand that between now and the actual election, obviously from now, Nigel Farage is still a lot more right than Labour. But as we get closer and closer to the next general election, I'm wondering if Nigel Farage starts straying more towards the left, will he then potentially lose a lot of hardcore right-wing voters?
Now you see, now you're onto something. Now you're onto something, because I do agree with you that this is a move. It's a bold move. Some would say it's opportunistic. I do think it's opportunistic to in degree. And the danger for Zam is, and this is where I absolutely agree with you, that he could be leaving his right flank open there to some Tory voters who would have flipped across, who would be absolutely wringing their hands in horror at the fact that people who are irresponsible and can't control their I was going to say their sexual activities are having more kids. That will be offensive to a lot of people, but that's how a lot of people feel when they themselves can't afford to have kids because they have to be responsible and they're middle class. So I do think it's a danger for Zam, but he's made that calculation and it looks like he's willing to take the risk.
I mean, I personally believe that if the Conservatives were to go a lot more right, that they could potentially catch a lot of the voters that are a bit like, reform, they're going a bit more left. Oh, look, the Conservatives, they're now seemingly more right-leaning. I'm not saying they are right-leaning as of now, but if something happens in the future and they do stray more towards the traditional right-wing anti-immigration stance, then I